Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. This podcast covers the national champions. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday weekend. We are not even that far late today for me, which is good, 9:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we hope you are here and ready to enjoy the show. If you have any questions for the Dean, Bill Kurlick, and the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, they are here with bells on. We will get to them. A lot to get into. Visits aplenty, recruiting scene going hard. First, I've got to tell you about Timeline, which produces MitoPure, a supplement that can really change how things are going for you because it supports your health at the foundation by encouraging cellular renewal. MitoPure is the precise dose of a rare postbiotic, urothalin A. Now, I really don't know what that is, but I can tell you this. It's the only supplement on the market clinically proven to target the effects of age-related cellular decline, cellular health. Not an easy statement on a Tuesday, is the foundation of your well-being and longevity. MitoPure recharges your cells, supporting any goals by helping all of your systems work better. Research-backed innovation unlocks your fullest potential. Awaken your strength, power, and resilience already in you with the first and only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level. Go to timeline.com/Bucknuts. That's timeline.com/Bucknuts and get 10% off your first order of MitoPure. All right. Look who it is. No worse for the wear after a Memorial Day weekend where they were likely perfecting the 12-ounce curl. Gentlemen, how goes it?
Very good.
Doing well.
William, I texted you this morning asking you to basically plan the show for me, and you told me visit season. Who's coming? Who do we need to be aware of? As you reset the recruiting calendar for our Bucknutters here, or the recruiting scene, who should we be focused on this week?
Well, two things. Official visits start this weekend for Ohio State. Ohio State fans maybe think, or at least some of them, that official visits are now starting. Official visits have actually been going on. They've been allowed. April, May, recruits could take official visits. Ohio State hasn't done that, and they really have followed the same pattern that they've had for a number of years, where they wait till the first weekend in June to start official visits. And that's what most of the schools, particularly up here in the Midwest, do, because the weather is better for one reason, and because they have camps going on, just a lot of stuff. And, coaches are out on the road in April and May. So it just makes it a better time overall when the coaches are back off the road to start official visits come the beginning of June, which this year happens to be the last day, 2 days of May, actually, May 30, May 31st, and then June 1st. So that's our first official visit weekend for Ohio State. And then right after that, we've got the first camp, which is Wednesday, June 5th. At least I think that's a Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it is. June 5th for the first camp. If it's anything like last year, and my early indications are it'll be a lot like last year, that first camp is usually filled, and Mark will like this, filled with Ohio guys. I remember last year on the first day of camp, that was, I thought, at least the best day of camp overall for Ohio talent. And then as things go through the process in June, more and more of the top out-of-state kids visit, or should I say camp and visit at Ohio State as the month of June goes on. So this coming weekend, you've got some really big names coming in. Guys like Felix Ojo, Ohio State's #1 remaining offensive line target. Savion Hyder, #1 when it comes to the running back board. Xavier Griffin, the 5-star linebacker, who is the country's #1 linebacker. Jake Kruel and Luke Waffle, edge guys that are at the top of the board type guys for Ohio State as far as defensive end edge guys. Max Suter, a tight end Ohio State would love to get. And I could go on and on. Preston Carey's a defensive lineman that they would love to get. So I could go on and on, but this weekend will be a really, really big official visit weekend in terms of talent.
You named several like legitimate top of the board guys there. Before we get to Mark, where in terms of invite list, from what you know so far, is this going to be the finest weekend of the summer, or do you have another special occasion planned?
It depends on how things play out. Ohio State's they've done a really good job, as they usually do, of dividing things up relatively equally as far as getting big names at every single weekend. This weekend, May 30th, and then June 6th, June 13th, and June 20th. Those are the other weekends. They've done a good job of getting those weekends relatively even, so to speak. But the other weekend right now to keep in mind that I think is going to be a great one is the last weekend, June 20th. But that doesn't always work out that way, because as you go through the process, kids sometimes commit elsewhere. But, you look ahead to June 20th, and you got Braylon Womack, you got Derek Cooper, you got Carter Meadows, you got Landon Barnes, and you've got a number of the Ohio State commitments as well. So that'll be a big weekend right now, providing that all the guys that will likely visit do make those visits.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't get the sense there's going to be a rush on commitments anywhere. This is really still more the evaluation and sales process. Mark, this is a rite of passage every, let's call it spring, for the Ohio guys to really get a chance to go in there and audition. I've been to one of those camps, and it's incredible. Now, I'm pretty sure they invite in coaches from all levels to kind of get a peek. So it's not necessarily just working out for Ohio State. Bill, I'll ask you this too. You both guys, do they still take the guys they really like inside the field house for a little extra interior look?
That is a 50-50. I think sometimes, Bill, we catch them before the workout starts with some guys over in the corner. They're testing, maybe alone. I think there are a few guys that sneak in there that are on a different time schedule. Maybe they have a flight leaving and they got it, but it's not the way it traditionally was, where about halfway through camp, you'd see an exodus of about 30 to 60 players, sometimes less. And it would be an indoor workout, and the rest of the camp would be for the coaches that were attending. Right. And for people, I know we have some people that don't always, hear this at the beginning of every season. They invite anyone who's really not a threat to them on the recruiting trail. Pitt is usually there, and Pitt's a pretty big school, and you'll see a coach from Pitt there now and then. You'll see the MAC, which is really nice for the MAC because it gets their eyes on a lot of prospects they can't get to their campus. I have the flyer pulled up if you want to show it to everybody of the actual what's going to go on for the Ohio State coaches. We'll zoom in on this. They have youth camps, which that's generally for the younger kids, and they'll stay overnight. They start out of the gate the 3rd and 4th. That's probably Monday, Tuesday next week. And then you see these one-day camps. That's where Bill and I are going to spend our summer. So if you want to see Bill, we're usually at all these. Sometimes we may miss one if there's another camp. Sometimes I'll go to another big camp that's on the same day as Ohio State after a while and ask Bill to cover my back. So we got 5 big ones. The 7-on-7 is a big thing too. I know Bill always goes to that, where there's a ton of schools and a ton of prospects that don't even go to the camp. It's a good way to find the younger prospects. So big summer ahead for Ohio State coaches. I know that the coaches grind it during this time of the year as hard as any time of the year running these camps.
And by the way, I talked about the June 5th camp. June 5th is Thursday, not Wednesday. So that'll be a huge camp one day before kids start arriving for official visits on June 6th. And as far as your question, Dan, I always get there early because some of the times the best things you see almost are the things that you see before camp even starts. Last year, they did a lot of having specialists arrive early and or quarterbacks and wide receivers to throw to. They had kickers and punters, especially kickers out there doing their auditions before camp started. And then they had some quarterbacks and receivers lined up to throw to before the camp started. So there'll be, I would certainly imagine, even though we're a week and a half out from that first camp, that'll be the same. And then they do divide the kids into groups. There will be the top group of whatever position. Offensive line, for instance. All the offensive linemen will be in one group, but they'll be separated, and the best offensive linemen will be together, and so on at every other position.
This is going to date me, but I remember going one time, and I tell this story occasionally. They went through the day, and it was super hot out, so I was like, please choose the guys to go inside so I can get out of the sun. And the guys they called in were in inverse order in terms of how much they wanted them at the time. Eric Glover Williams was the key guy. Terry McLaurin, Paris Campbell, Mike Gesicki. I'm wondering if there's someone else there. And that was the first time I saw.
I can't believe you haven't been back since that. If that's what you saw.
No, I've been back. That's the one.
And that,
I've been back.
Hasn't brought you. Yeah. That's
those, I remember that one the most because it was urban, and what I remember most about it was, and how recruiting is just so interesting, is that Eric Glover Williams was the name. You know what I mean? It was the guy that they got in there. It was a big time. Everyone was talking about. Terry McLaurin was told, "Go home and have a great senior year, and we'll offer you." So that's interesting how that worked out. Gesicki looked tremendous and said no, went to Penn State. And then I remember Paris Campbell running. And when you see Paris Campbell run for the first time in person, you're like, oh, my God. And someone yelled out, he's only 16. He was a really young guy. By the way, Paris Campbell, proud member of your Dallas Cowboys, but we digress. All right.
Isn't it crazy how the hottest name of the day then doesn't have the NFL career that the others do? And I mean, it just, that story repeats itself. It's cliche. I know Bill and I do that all the time. Today, with the information we have, this is the guy, but a lot of road to cover. Eric Glover Williams was electric. I mean, absolutely electric. I remember when he showed up to the Ohio State Friday Night Lights camp, everybody wore the team issue Friday Night Lights camp black shirt or whatever it was, and he wore the Superman shirt. The Superman seal on his chest, and he may have even removed that at one point, but he definitely stood out amongst the crowd.
I'm gonna date. Where was he from? He's from Massillon, Canton. He was a little like option quarterback.
Yeah.
Mark?
Canton,
where was he from?
McKinley.
Yep.
Yeah, but running quarterback for sure. Could throw it enough for a high school game. Absolutely electric. Percy Harvin, jitterbug moves. I mean, the explosive stop and go stuff. It was all there. I think off the field eventually got him, more than his talent, and kind of prevented him from being where. And I don't remember how that ended. I'm sure a Bucknutter out there may remember the final, but a lot of times after you exit scene right, we stop following you and let you go off and live your life. And yeah, that seemed to be the way it ended.
Only adding to the irony of Tad is the guy they sent back to get a scholarship offer, I believe, has made close to $100 million in the NFL. So good for Terry McLaurin, who, by the way, when he left Ohio State, I was like, he'll be a really good gunner on special teams. More than that. So that's why Brian Hartline gets the big dollars. All right. Next sponsor, and this is important. I got to tell you about this one. Look at this. By the way, and you'll know this, but definitely when I talk about our third sponsor that they've been sending us some free product, Huel. This stuff is good. Perfectly balanced meal. Saves you time. Delicious. New customers get 15 off plus a free gift at Huel.com when you use the code Bucknuts. And that's good reason. Actually tastes like a milkshake. This is a fact. What flavor do I have out here today? Because I had to move on. Yeah, the Black Edition chocolate. Yummy. Nutritionally complete, ready to drink meal. Again, this is going to save you some time. Also, It's getting to be bikini season for Bill and Mark. So want to watch that waistline. Want to take something that maybe makes up for a meal. It's incredibly affordable, high protein meals, less than $5, budget friendly option that you should be genuinely excited about. Like I said, start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with this exclusive offer for new customers. 15%, 15% off. There you go. Plus a free gift. Huel.com. Like I said, it is delicious. I cannot take a sip right now because I'm working. However, I would encourage you guys to go after it. All right. We have some great questions posed by the people. One of them was a discussion of two guys who have become, there we go, thanks to chat. One thing about the chat is that it gives us a big old brain on trivia, and someone always comes through. Two guys that are getting discussed a lot, Bill, and I want you to comment on them. One is Tyler Atkinson, and one is Xavier Griffin. Robert Howard asks, who is the more likely get? Great question. Xavier Griffin or Tyler Atkinson? You want to talk about werewolves, Bill? These two guys could be in a horror flick together. Maybe tell us a little bit quickly of who each person is, just to refresh everyone on a new week. And then your thoughts on both. I imagine both are going to be very difficult, very big NIL catches.
Yeah, Xavier Griffin is the linebacker that was committed to USC, but decommitted. And he will be in Columbus this weekend unless something changes, which I don't expect to happen. Making his official visit to Ohio State. He also has Alabama. He has Texas. And he has Florida State. Those are his visits in that order. I think Ohio State has a chance, but I think the question was, who do they have the better chance at between Xavier Griffin? And by the way, he's from Gainesville, Georgia. Tyler Atkinson, also from Georgia. Of the two, I would go with Tyler Atkinson. But I think that could change depending on official visits. Griffin wants to see, he didn't feel like he fit in Jim Knowles' defense like a round peg in a round hole, so to speak. He wants to see how he will fit in Matt Patricia's defense when he comes and makes a visit. So right now, I would say Tyler Atkinson, but maybe Matt Patricia convinces him that the fit would be tremendous in his defense when he makes that official visit this weekend. So we'll see. But I would go with Tyler Atkinson as being the more likely guy to end up at Ohio State right now of those two.
I don't know how that guy's not a fit in anybody's defense wherever he's
Seriously.
at.
Yeah. Change the defense.
You're so good and so fast. I don't know how we're going to get you in this defense where you're going to be able to make plays. It might not work for you. Like, what is going on?
Also, what defense do you want to run, dude? We'll run it.
There you go. Yeah. How about just line up across from the ball, and when they snap it, go get it? How about that defense?
Here's what's going to happen. They're going to snap it and give the guy the ball. Once the guy gets the ball, you go get him.
I mean, I do get that analogy, Bill. I don't mean to laugh at it too much, but Tyler Atkinson is so good.
Those are actually Griffin's own words.
Yeah.
No, I believe it. And it lets you also know how hard recruiting is. You've got these guys wanting specialized things who are really, kind of a jack of all trades. So the coaches can't even, you got to play checkers instead of chess.
I mean, you try to think of a Patriots linebacker or something that was like him and ran like that, but he might be different than the guys they used. I mean, I think of Brewskis and all those middle linebackers, they were bruisers. I mean, Atkinson might be a will for him, and it's tough to find maybe a comparison. Maybe that's what happened. Like we've never put a middle linebacker this fast there. I mean, you got to go to some really like a Fred Warner or some of these guys that are safeties playing middle linebacker.
And you mentioned New England, of course, because Matt Patricia is the new defensive coordinator. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I do get the sense, and I don't want to digress too much here with these. I don't want to bring up some names, but guys who are like kind of put in the middle of the defense and just told pretty much to go get everything. I can see how they would want a more specialized look for college just because that position really doesn't exist in college football. I'm not sure, or in the pros. No, Fred Warner's close, but they don't really ask the linebacker to do as much as Tyler Atkinson is asked to do for his high school. So always love recruiting guys that are great that you ask to do less, by the way. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just picture that New England defense and like Izzo at linebacker, Bruschi at linebacker. Some of the guys they had, aren't that mold of the athletic guy. It's more the, and NFL is different, so they might be fitting a different mold to play between the tackles there. But yeah, I could see that. Willie McGinnis, that guy was a big 6'5", 260-pound guy. Atkinson, man, he can fly. I mean, he's a 220-pound track guy. Yeah, it's much different player. I mean, these guys are all good in their own special positions, but for some reason, are we all drawing a blank on a Tyler Atkinson comp on, where exactly – because he's skinnier. I don't know if he plays on the edge and he's a pass rusher right out of the gate, or if you stand him up at will and let him run and hit. Junior Seau, yeah.
It's funny you asked that. I don't have a quick answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean,
seeing him in 8th grade throws me off because he was skinnier and smaller then. Maybe once we see him again, you'll say, okay, there is a body there that, definitely changes your comp.
That's not bad, Sean Duffy, Junior Seau. And for a quick digression,
the Shazier, I like that.
Better.
Yeah,
that's the best one yet. James, you're the winner. And by the way, Shazier, arguably my favorite defensive player we've had here. Talk about a run and hit werewolf. That was it. By the way, Ryan Shazier, and Bill will tell you this, in high school, was an edge pass rusher. Did not play linebacker. They stood him up here, put him in the middle, and hello, he was supposed to be tremendous. I hate to tell you guys this again, but more Cowboys talk. The Steelers picked right before the Cowboys in that draft, and the Cowboys were going to take Ryan Shazier. It didn't work out. They took Zach Martin. Anyway, thank God they didn't take
one of my favorite stories involved Ryan Shazier. We were
I know it. With Herb
flying back home from I believe it was the All-Star game in Florida. I'm pretty sure that was correct. But we were flying back home, and just by chance, I have the seat that is on the plane, 2 seats in front of, and I should say 1 seat in front of 2 guys. They were pretty good players, Ryan Shazier and Braxton Miller. They were flying up to Ohio State from there to get their Ohio State careers started. I enjoyed listening to their conversations all the way back home on that airplane as they talked back and forth, and I was 1 seat in front of them.
Shazier, who's from Florida, was recruited by Urban Meyer and said no to him when he was at Florida. And then Urban tells a story about how he was in warm-ups at Ohio State. He bent down, leaned into his ear, and said, I told you you'd be playing for me. So it all worked out for Shazier. Tremendous player. Tremendous werewolf as we go there. All right. My Junior Seau story was this. I went to high school with a kid from San Diego. Junior is from San Diego. And unfortunately, or fortunately, Junior was in my class. And my guy's friend was going to play tight end at California and got into an all-star game against the guy. He said, Junior Seau. And he said, I almost quit football at halftime of an all-star game because this guy beat me up like I was a 3-year-old. By the way, my guy going to Cal was 6'5", 270. And he said, Junior Seau, who turned out to be Seau, whipped him like he stole something. So you're talking about good dudes here as we digress like a mug. Doug Shepard asking a question I've been asked a million times. I don't have a good answer for it. It's just always been that way. And I actually grew up fighting off Redskins fans. Blame my parents. All right, William. There's another question in here. Harold Carmichael. We're getting crazy here. Okay. Both you guys. Is there any thought that Chris Henry Jr. might be growing too tall to play wide receiver? I'm not sure you can be too tall to play wide receiver. LeBron may disagree with that after a fine few years in Akron. He's a big dude now. We saw a picture of all the guys recently, and he is much bigger than it looks like, unless it was a camera angle, than pretty much everybody coming to Ohio State, including Max Clare. Mark, do you have any thoughts on the monstrous superstar at modern day headed for Ohio State named Chris Henry?
I'm scared to answer this because the answer is yeah, you do get worried when they get that tall. We had this talk where Harold Carmichael came up as a very tall receiver. I don't think you've ever seen a receiver that tall in the NFL since him. You see these guys that have some length. Chris Henry Sr. was one. Randy Moss was one. Calvin Johnson's a different type of player, but once you get over 6'5", it becomes that getting in and out of breaks and running the entire route tree and not becoming just a downfield guy, a one-trick pony. I mean, Bill Belichick really talks about when they got Randy Moss, how Randy Moss taught him how getting down the field and could, help their offense. And they never had a guy like that. So the secret, I think, with these tall guys is staying skinny. Because once you start beefing up at 6'5" or 6'7", all of a sudden you're carrying 200, 220, and your suddenness. Ask Kyle Pitts how it's going in the NFL, being 6'5" or 6'6" and running the 4.4 and not having that explosiveness in and out of breaks, just having the straight line speed. This isn't a ringing endorsement of tall receivers over 6'5". Now, all of that said, Chris Henry Sr. is genetically related to Chris Henry Jr., and they both had that skinny-legged frame. If you remember, he could fly, and he could settle down and make breaks, and I'm talking about Chris Henry Sr. I actually went back and watched this tape when I was making films for Chris Henry Jr., and it's rare that you find those. Deion Sanders has extremely skinny legs. If you've ever seen him with, his shorts on, I know he's got some leg problems now, but his calves are like toothpicks, and he was a 6'2" guy. But what made him so fast is those legs weren't carrying any weight, and they could almost run like a chicken. He was flying with those skinny legs. So if you can be a tall guy that keeps your skinny legs, he'll become a TE. That's tough. That's tough because once you get to that 6'7", to become a tight end, you probably got to get to 250, 260, and you become that kind of tight end. It's really such a finicky world as a scout, seeing kids who have that size, because you can't lose your explosiveness. You can't lose your settle down and pop out of breaks. Or you become a slant fade go ball guy, or just a stop pitch guy. You really don't get into the true double move type stuff. When those big guys try that double move, it takes a half hour for them to get through it sometimes. So Chris Henry has not shown this yet. And I, don't want people to get, too crazy about, he's too big, but that is pushing it. And you know what? Jeremiah Smith is really big too. And he gets it done. So there are guys that if you do pull this skill set off, you're one of the best of all time, type of player, if you can keep your explosiveness. But I like everybody else, saw that picture and said, whoa.
Keep in mind, and this has something to do with it. Tight ends don't get drafted as high as wide receivers, and they don't get paid like wide receivers. So when you go to someone in college and say, hey, we're going to move you from wide receiver to tight end, your salary is going to go down eventually. People aren't into that. So while that may be, as Dee said, his best schematic move, I'd be surprised to see it happen just because of the way it kind of damages your stock. Bill, not to take a shot at the home office, but his stock was damaged in the recent rankings. What do you base that on, do you think? I mean, that's not your vote. That's the home office, but he dropped from being kind of the number one receiver to in the mix, and from somewhere, he's ranked somewhere now between 30 and 50. Is that out of sight, out of mind, or do you think people are really thinking the size is an issue?
I think it's just a matter of the injury, and he didn't get to perform during the season last season, and he was recovering and all, and going into this season, I think he will go back up, in my opinion, once he gets back on the field for his senior season. And my answer to that is pretty short as far as will he grow out of wide receiver? I'm not worried about it.
His comparison could be like Kyle Pitts from the Falcons. That's kind of what Kyle Pitts was in college, a tall, lanky receiver They kept getting bigger and bigger over his time. And then he was at 220 pounds. And people said, oh, he's going to be a tight end. And in the NFL, they just scheme you up. When he's in the game, they know he's not blocking a defensive end or a 5 technique. So, they rule that out and they put a safety or a corner on him, and then he's been negated. And, the 4-3 tight end that was going to catch 100 balls doesn't necessarily come to fruition.
Well, I'm not worried about it for 2 reasons. One of them has been mentioned, skill set. And the second reason I'm not worried about it is I know what Ohio State thinks of him. And those 2 things tell me he's going to be a great wide receiver at Ohio State. And here's a little teaser question. I was talking about the plane ride home and Shazier, Braxton Miller. Right off the top of your head, without looking, and anybody out there, what year were those 2 guys seniors in high school? Because I feel a little old when I think about it. When were they seniors? No takers so far.
2012.
Mark?
2012?
No, I have no idea. I mean, I would just
Close, Dan. 2011.
Dang!
It's been 14 years since Ryan Shazier and Braxton Miller were seniors in high school.
That's the story of my life, man. Off by 1, Bill. Just so close, but yet no cigar for Dan. All right.
I see a couple comments about all he has to do is add 30 pounds or add 60 pounds. And that's not all it is. I talk about like tight ends. You got to be a badass. So receivers aren't usually wired that way, if that's a nice way to say that, where you move down and you start blocking those 240-pound outside linebackers and 260-pound defensive ends. You got to have a nasty disposition and you got to want to do it. So it's just not as easy as, okay, I put on the 60 pounds. You got to go in there and learn how to street fight with the men. And then I don't know if his frame is that type of frame where if he puts that weight on, it's going to go on in the right places. He's a skinny framed guy, which is going to work in his favor to be a Harold Carmichael or one of these skinny, fast receivers. So that's going his way. But, yeah, it's just not as easy as, hey, just put on 30 pounds and lift some weights, and now you're a tight end. There's a lot of development in there to blocking it. There's men in there, and receivers aren't usually looked at in that way.
Yeah. There's a lot of change that goes into it, mentality-wise.
Yeah.
Chris Henry, and he hasn't been asked to block linemen in his life, I don't think. With good reason, you wouldn't want to put him in harm's way when he's such a weapon, especially in high school, man. I mean, come on now. Modern day does not need.
You hear the story of the quarterbacks that get moved to tight end all the time. The 6'5" or 6'6" quarterback that, hey, it's time to go to tight end. And then sometimes that works out. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a transition. And I can see a lot of people are pointing it. It's a mindset. It's really a mindset to get into those trenches.
This is a good point, though. G. Scott tried to make the move. G. Scott, though, great dude, just not the physical specimen that Henry is. I don't even think he's not as big in any way. But G turned out to be a great veteran, and boy, he's got some real highlights from a championship run that he's going to savor. And his dad, of course, fine human being and host of a Seattle sports radio show and a great proponent of the Buckeyes. G. Scott Sr. and G. Scott Jr. were gems for this program, and it worked out great for him. Another gem of a program is Cornbread Hemp, America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. They also make seltzers. It is graduation season. I may or may not have provided some of those free samples to some of the moms, and they are now converts. So if you want a healthier happy hour, you can achieve that in several ways. I see Mark chuckling. Mark, this is totally legal. Don't get your mind in the gutter.
The moms, huh? The moms. Okay. Blame it on the moms.
Happily married Dan. Happily married. I just like to provide love to all who want to attend parties and enjoy. So this is legal. 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, just the right dose. No harsh solvents, farm bill and compliant and legal for adults over 21. I don't hang out with moms less than 21, Mark. That's my rule. Okay? So don't be cracking the whip on me. All right. If you're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, 100% legal, like I said, go to cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts and use code Bucknuts. 30% off your first order. Cheers to a happier, healthy hour. You can see the disclaimer at the bottom. And Cam's got it right. No Diddy parties in this town. You kidding me? No chance, Lance Ito. No. But let's get to the more questions. But people really like the discussion about tight end conversion. Get some good points coming here. Basketball power forwards make great tight ends.
Antonio Gates going to the Hall of Fame. And I noticed he took a shot at I shouldn't bring this up, but he took a shot at Kent State football. The T-shirt.
Who dared do that, Mark?
Yeah, the T-shirt that he has at the Hall of Fame says Kent State basketball on it.
Oh,
yeah. So he's going in as a Kent State basketball player, not a Kent State football player, because he didn't really play football at Kent State.
I was going to say
the rumors were they didn't let him play football and basketball. They weren't going to let him do both. So he just said, "Okay, if you don't want me to do both, I'm going to do basketball." And NFL thought that was okay.
I'm pretty sure they won an NCAA tournament game with him playing. Did they not?
I don't remember. That was after. I'm the only tight end from Kent State that didn't go pro in the 90s. OJ Santiago went to the NFL to the Falcons.
Yep.
He invented the Dirty Bird that did that with Jamal Anderson, and they went to the Super Bowl his freshman year. And then Jason Gavazda went to the Baltimore Ravens, and I believe he got hurt in training camp the year they went to the Super Bowl. But because he was hurt, you get to be on the roster and you get your Super Bowl ring and all that type of stuff. So a lot of success for the Kent tight ends, except for myself.
I don't know about that, Mark.
Okay.
I'm
here and they're not. So I have the nickname Poobah. I have Bill and Dan every 2 days a week. I got some great fans. I'm not going to discount what I have in my life.
Listen, we couldn't be luckier. All right. Mika, not to be denied, Bill, just coming in at the end here with the knowledge question. Arthur Scott, Caden Turner, Terrell O'Neill, and Elijah Durham-Smith, are they camping for us? Here's my guess. They're from Ohio.
Yes, all three.
Arthur Scott is both of you.
Yeah, Arthur Scott is from Streetsboro High School, and I think I would put him the highest on that list. He has been a center and a defensive tackle. Has some mid-Big Ten offers. High school? Streetsboro High School. Okay. And then
Mike Hall U?
Yeah, it's Mike Hall U. Exactly. Terrell O'Neill's from Benedictine. He is an explosive player. I watched him play against Maxwell Riley from Avon Lake, first game of the year last year, and he was really dominant that game. They really put a hurting on Avon Lake week one, and it wasn't expected. And then Elijah Durham-Smith is one of my best defensive ends in Ohio, but I don't think he's an Ohio State recruit right now. I think he's going to be more mid-Big Ten, maybe lower Big Ten. But again, to the question wasn't how much does Mark Porter like these guys? It was, are these guys going to be camp guys this summer? And I bet they will. And I bet these are the type of guys that we're going to take someone like this on a list like this. Only one or two this year. And, there'll be 30, 40 Ohio guys that roll through those camps in those 5 days. And someone like this comes out of it. I think the first guy on the list was the guy I like the most, Arthur Scott. But, again, he may not be long enough for defensive tackle, and I don't know if they're going to take a center. So working against those guys, but, yeah, that's what you're looking at.
One of those type guys was one of my favorite guys in Ohio State's 2025 class. Who would that be? Anybody? Any guesses?
Who just showed up and earned his spot? Yeah,
that just kind of –
the Westerville North player, Jake Cook.
That'd be good. That's a good guess, but that's not the guy.
Yeah, but that's the realm these group would be in. When we were last year at this time, we were talking about Jake Cook the way we're talking about Arthur Scott and some of these other guys.
The correct answer would be BP Miller, the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Shows up at camp, puts on a show, and within a couple of weeks, he's a Buckeye.
Tests out of his mind. Blew the testing out of the water. Yeah.
Mika, we're going to give you credit for that. I did not hit the button quickly enough. Mika, shocker, wins the trivia portion of the show. And who knows? Very impressive. Yeah, so this is dreams do come true, man. There are some guys who, and we're talking about kids and human beings here. Someone had a growth spurt. Someone got faster. Someone went in the weight room that they didn't expect to and blossomed. Someone is going to get a lottery ticket to become an Ohio State player that they earned. It happens every year, like Bill said. It's invariable. Go ahead, Mark.
Standing at the college camps, I have been borderline lecturing college coaches on, we'll start talking about this process is so messed up. You believe all this. And what's happening is you're offering kids as sophomores, and sometimes you're just offering the first kids that hit puberty. That have
Correct.
A little jump on everybody, and it's not a truly great evaluation that you're doing, but it's who's winning the race that day. And so you do that math and you offer them, where the Division II colleges and these smaller schools are killing it on late bloomers that are blowing up senior year, where everybody else is full. And I sound like a broken record. The first round isn't Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama for every pick. It's usually 25 different schools mixed in there. A couple of them have double first round picks, but that's, to my point, is because everyone offered these kids so young, you didn't get a full evaluation. You got the leader of the race at the half mile point, but it was a mile race, and you should have waited till closer to the end if you wanted to get a better evaluation. But the process does not allow for that anymore. So there's my lecture that I've kind of shared that with. And college coaches will turn right back at me and say, Mark, we 100% agree, but we can't change the way this process has got earlier and younger.
Basketball question to finish. Dallas Dan. How did Deuce McBride get away from the Buckeyes basketball team? Certainly a miss, especially because he played at Cincinnati Moeller. Believe it or not, Mark, I don't even remember this. Deuce McBride also played some quarterback for Moeller. When he was coming up, that was kind of his thing. Stud. I think the issue was he suffered an injury. I can't remember if it was his junior or senior year, and he missed the entire season. Moeller still went to the state tournament that year with Jackson Hayes as the center.
Yeah, I remember.
Can you imagine Deuce McBride and Jackson Hayes on one high school team? I mean, Lakers fans don't love Jackson Hayes now, but still, you got a point guard and a center. Moeller had a stretch of high school who I don't think they lost for 2 or 3 years in a row. They were tremendous. And then he went to West Virginia, and I think he did well with Huggins at West Virginia. Think about McBride, great defender when he was coming up. He's not that tall, great wingspan, and if you watch him play, I don't want to use a gross term, he's got a lot of confidence. Does that make sense? Large confidence. You can address that to any body type you want, and you could see that in the game the other night. They came back. I thought he was the key in the third quarter. Just a stud. All right. We went off topic there. We've gone 43 minutes. Now I got to pay Bill an extra 3 minutes and 11 seconds worth of cost. So got to get out of here now, but we appreciate you guys stopping by. Hope everyone is ready to rock after a long holiday weekend. We'll be back with these guys on Thursday, and we will get you completely up to date on who's coming as visit season has kicked in at Ohio State. All right, guys, have a good one. Nutters of Buck.